Welcome back viewers, ladies, gentlemen, non-binaries and anyone with ears or other sound detection organs. Hope you enjoy. We are continuing with Going Native, written by Uncle Sealing. Going Native, Chapter 81. The Necessity floated in space, seemingly immobile. The strangely bulbous ship's belly was pointed towards the star known as Sol, bright and vibrant from a distance measured in light months. Slowly, carefully, the nearly 200-meter-wide cylinder that formed the spacecraft's abdomen began to iris open. As the starlight hit the contents of the cylinder, the shape of the very cheap array was revealed. It hung in place like a steel spiderweb, each vertex where strands met seemingly decorated by a silvered glass disc topped with a sensor. As the array went through its startup procedure, each one of the discs shuddered, unlocked, and began to move on its own. Like an insect's compound eye, each disc meant very little on its own, but the gestalt would be far more than the sum of its parts. We're online. Samuel sat in the copilot's seat, cross-legged in the oversized chair. His VR goggles were on, a haptic glove on one hand and a keyboard on his lap. His fingers tapped away at a truly impressive pace, filling the cockpit with a continuous low roar. Anything worth mentioning? Sammy had their own goggles on, watching the composite image feed as it came in. As each one of the 360 telescopes came into focus, the composite image got sharper and sharper. First there was just a blur, then a disk, then a ball, then the occasional faint dots of the planets as they orbited Sol. Mirror 217 is a bit sluggish, but we knew that one had a little more personality than the rest. Samuel took a few moments to make some adjustments, his gloved hand reaching out to adjust controls only he could see. All right, we're good. Minus 92 minutes until event. Everything looks clean. Very sharp. Even at this distance, Sammy could see a small dot of the Earth orbiting Sol. Gigabytes of data were pouring in every second. The clock ticked down slowly, but a lot of being an astronomer was preparing for just the right moment. They waited. Iing, watch our drift. Samuel's voice was almost artificially calm. Drift is within tolerance, using gyros to get us back to zero. I've got this. There was pride in Iing's tone. He had been spending a lot of time practicing this maneuver and he was nailing it. Slowly, the timer counted down until, finally, all eyes on the screen, they reached 3, 2, 1. Nothing happened. At least, nothing visible to the naked eye. Stacking images now. Filtering for noise. Samuel hummed idly to himself. Here we go. The Earth popped up on the main screen. Far away, it was little more than a sphere, a bead hanging in space. In slow motion, a dot of light appeared on top of it. The dot got flared bright and, in little more than an instant, dimmed down to nothing. Sammy grinned. Ooh, that is interesting. We have some fun data coming in from that blast. I'm curious what else we will pick up. Stowing the VCA dot. Samuel's fingers flew as each mirror moved into its default position before solenoids locked them in place. Closing the shutter, and we're done. All right, I'm firing up the phase drive. We'll move ahead of the light front and do it again. The ship swung slowly into position under Iing's careful movements. They set course for 2 light hours away, hit the go button, and were gone. 14 slammed his fists on the table hard enough for it to bounce slightly. He was pissed and everyone knew it, but now he had their attention. I would like to put it on the record that all of this is Five's fault. He took a moment to point at the slender, olive-skinned man across the table. I don't see how you could blame me for this. He shrugged. You insisted that my men take that goddamn serial killer with them. Oh come on, you exaggerate. He really doesn't. Tu pulled a sheaf of paper out of his bag and put it on the table, flipping to find the proper notes. He was carrying a knife that belonged to a Shilvati clerk that went missing and is presumed dead. With that in mind, the Interior took his picture and sent it to every Marine planet-wide. So far there are 4 more missing Shil that he can be tied to. Serial killer is accurate. We need strong men for this war. 5 still didn't seem flustered. You can't blame me for using the best tool available. 14 glared, letting the moment linger. I have a question for you, 5. Did you tell Morris to attack Grant? Because he ignored Lewis's orders. I may have instructed Morris to make sure the traitor cooperated. How could I know what the results would be? 5's grin was predatory and frankly sickening. No remorse at all. I can answer that. Everyone turned to the new voice. 23 hadn't said a word the entire meeting. Her voice was high and sharp, cutting easily through the room and commanding full attention. The way I see it, the meeting could have gone 4 ways. The first way, the one we all agreed to, was that 14's agents would speak with Eustace Grant neutrally and see if we could possibly turn him at a later date. Ease him into the idea and see if we could glean anything about the painter facility at the same time. The second way would be Morris beating Eustace Grant, turning it into an interrogation. This would result in us getting the information we wanted, assuming he didn't just lie to us, but would also ensure the man would never cooperate in the future. Considering that he's a local hero to the Shil for stopping that mass shooting, it could also drastically raise tensions in the region. The Interior would increase the amount of resources being used to hunt us. The third way would, of course, be Morris simply killing Grant. Just like number 2, only more so. The fourth is what we're seeing now. Grant kills Morris and we have ensured that we will never get any sort of cooperation from anyone in the painter facility. Everything from option 2 except now they know Morris's identity. A psychopathic killer working for us who literally kicked a dog across the room and attacked a cripple. The more they learn about Morris, the clearer it is to the Shilvati that our organization is not made of rational people fighting an unjust occupation but are instead just mad dogs who need to be put down. Even our human support is dwindling. There's no way. Recruitment is down in the entire region too. Interrupted. We've also had 6% of our lower-level operatives go dark. Not captured or killed, just decided to no longer be associated with us. We can't just let people quit. 5 practically shouted. You can't quit a war. And what do you want us to do? Make a few examples with a public execution or 2. 23 laughed bitterly. You do that and we'll have hundreds of operatives go directly to the Shilvati government with every piece of information they have on the organization. Everyone that quit will want protection from the rabid little shits we will have become. 14 couldn't be pleased with the conversation so far, but at least 5 had shut up. The scrawny man was just sulking now. He turned to his notes and considered the next thing on the agenda. I think we need to talk about the militia shake-up. Another side effect of 5's idiocy. 23 said calmly. Her cool demeanor seemed to incense 5 and he threw himself to his feet, bellowing. You cannot put that on me. Of course I can. 14 had to admire the woman's poise. She hadn't even flinched and her voice was even as she continued. We all agreed to a course of action and you decided to disregard our decision. Your man Morris was the wrecking ball that broke the camel's back, if you don't mind the Malifaux. We knew how corrupt the militia was. Nearly every precinct in this region had at least one shill we had some claws sunk into. We could have kept it going indefinitely if your picked man hadn't made the Interior's involvement necessary. Now every precinct is being audited and our contacts are either going silent or spilling their giant purple guts to their superiors in hopes of a lighter sentence. Oh sure, you blame me. But what about 14? 5 swung to glare at him, but 14 was trying his best to emulate the woman on the other side of the room. Cool and collected. If his idiots had finished off Grant, it wouldn't have gone this far. That wasn't their job. We all agreed to be diplomatic with the man. You made a mess and now you're just upset that I didn't clean it up for you. Not for me. For US. This is bigger than just me, and if I go down, we all go down. The room went silent at the implied threat. Moving on, Two continued with a cough. The rather public backlash over Grant's near death at the hands of the militia has drawn down the eyes of Provincial Governess Wasiro. Regional Governess Elinke has always been willing to ignore corruption as long as it didn't become public and her own wheels got grease, but now she has to look tough in front of her boss. Interior agents are combing through every public service in the region. Any smell of wrongdoing and the interior swarms it like flies on shit. Entire departments are being shut down. Marines are stepping in to pick up the militia's slack, and they are not necessarily being gentle about it. We have human shill violence spiking in Denver, Albuquerque, Salt Lake City, and most of the surrounding smaller towns. I think the smart thing to do is suspend operations in the short term. 14 tried to keep his voice even. Let things come back down as best it can. We'll have to be gentle, but we might be able to salvage this. Once the tensions have eased, we can start digging back into the new guard. We can push the populace for calls to reform and petition Wasiro. If we play it right, we could end up with less militia oversight overall. They'll be too busy auditing their own work to actually watch for us. You have to be shitting me. Five's anger had turned into a cold fury. We have the public on our side. The Shilvati have overstepped and now the local colour is rising up. This is the perfect time to get some real work done. A riot or two is just what we need. If we push for a riot now, the regional governess is going to come down hard. She has to at least appear to be in control. A lot of people will die. 23's contempt was total. She is willing to do a whole lot of damage if it means keeping Wasiro off her back. She took a moment, tapping a lacquered nail on the table. Unless that's your plan. Make martyrs out of the local colour, as you put it. Revolutions are watered with the blood of patriots. Five stood again, letting his chair topple. You're just pusses playing at revolutionary. Keep having your little discussions and make your little plans. I'll get real work done. He stomped off up the stairs, making a racket before finally slamming the door. Two sighed loudly. Don't worry about him, I'll take care of it. He flipped to a new sheet. Any luck getting some people into the regional governess's party? We had 2 people on the wait staff, but they were let go. Thanks to the uptick in violence, they aren't allowing any human staff. 14 didn't try to hide his bitterness. The only humans who will be there are the ones on the guest list. All people who have been incredibly successful in the last few years. Nobody we have managed to turn. And our ravens. No luck there either. It takes time to fuck your way up the social ladder. 23 sighed. I think we're stuck. Alright, I think we can call the meeting there, then. 2 shuffled his papers one last time before tucking everything away again. The small drop ship cut through the sky silently, making its way towards the Painter Research Institute's empty landing pad. Without the necessity and the telescope assembly, the area felt empty. The new craft barely took up 1/10 of the space, and it settled on stubby landing feet with little more than an audible clunk. Stace stood stiffly, waiting. His entire body felt like a sharp bundle of nerves, twisted as tight as they would go. Elora stood to his left side, holding his pale hand in her much larger purple one. On the right, where he held his cane, stood a Skell. Stace appreciated having so much support for this meeting. If things went well, it would change his life. If it went poorly, well. An orange blur streaked past, questing for great truths, heading towards the little craft at a dead run, cybernetic feet splayed wide for grip. She was fast when she wanted to be, though Stace had to grin a little. She was running like a little kid, arms held out to her sides for balance. Stace followed at a more leisurely pace, arriving just in time for the ramp to finish lowering and their new guest to show himself. The sunlight glinted off of what Stace first thought to be a helmet. Then his brain tried to adjust, first seeing the slick glossy black of H.R. Giger's creations, then crossing that with Peter Weller as RoboCop. He was looking at Spreads the Word through Noble Service, questing for great truths as uncle and a gear child surgeon priest. The man's head seemed to be encased in obsidian, a black glass visor that started just above his nose and wrapped all the way to the nape of his neck. Silvery metal plates covered the sides of his head, completing the helmet look, with little ball-tipped antennas sticking out where the ears would be. Stace let his eyes slide lower, thankful that Quest seemed to be taking all of her uncle's attention. His arms and torso looked organic, at least from what Stace could see that wasn't covered by the pocket-studded coverall he wore, but his legs were similar to Quest's. Each was a silvery metal replacement that started at the knee joint and continued down. The feet, on the other hand. Spreads the Word through Noble Service didn't have feet. What he had first reminded Stace of roller blades, except where he would expect wheels there were instead rubberized treads. Like if you made skates out of a tank. They were wider and longer than a normal foot, but not big enough to be cumbersome. Stace must have been staring, because the next words he heard caught him completely off guard. "And you must be Eustace Grant. Oh, my poor boy, what have those butchers done to you?" The feet swiveled towards him and Stace's eyes moved up slowly. He took a moment to swallow before meeting the gear child's gaze. Stace couldn't help it. He smiled. Only the chin, mouth, and nose of Spreads the Word were exposed, and the orange skin there was lined with wrinkles and obvious smile lines. The man was clearly old, very old, something that contrasted with the smooth and sleek cybernetics. What got Stace smiling, though, were the eyes. He couldn't see them, if Spreads the Word even had eyes anymore. The sleek black glass was completely opaque, but that didn't matter. It served as a display, and where eyes should be there were two glowing images. Pike-slated drawings of eyes opened wide in cartoonish horror, then turned into inverted U-shapes as the gear child smiled. "It's all right, my young friend, we'll get you sorted out." He rolled up to Stace and offered a fist bump. "I'm hardly a young man. Just turned 30 in Shield years a few days ago." Stace held out his cane to a Skell, who held it while he returned the bump. Spreads the Word laughed, the eye animations changing to match his obvious mirth. "I have granddaughters older than you. Not that it's a competition. Did you enjoy your birthday, at least?" Stace shrugged. "I was sitting in jail." It came out flippant, but Stace was trying not to dwell on things. He decided to change the subject. "This is Elora, she is the Painter Research Institute's security coordinator, and this is a Skell, the site medical director." "I'm just a nurse," a Skell said quietly, his face darkening to the color of charcoal. Spreads the Word reached out with both hands, grabbing the Helcom by the shoulders. "There's no such thing as just a nurse. You've worked hard to get where you are, and from what I've heard your skills are quite impressive. Be proud." He gave a Skell a pat on the shoulders before turning to Elora. "And you're one of the ones that saved Mr. Grant's life." "Yep, one of the butchers." Elora smirked. Her obvious ease helped settle Stace's nerves. He had been expecting to have an immediate panic attack at seeing the new gear child, but this friendly old man just seemed both too reassuring and too completely strange to set off his fight-or-flight reflex. He was like a friendly grandpa mixed with one of those nerds who made costumes of their favorite cartoon characters. "Please, call me Stace." And call me Word, if you'd like. I know my name can be a bit of a mouthful. A kindly smile filled his face again, complete with the animated eyes. Now, I hope it doesn't cause any undue distress, but I do have a gift for you. Word reached into one of the many pockets on the jumpsuit he was wearing and handed over a clear plastic cube. It seemed to have something floating inside it. Stace took it in his left hand before he really glanced at it, and, when he did, it took a force of will to not fling the thing away. Just for a moment, though. After that, curiosity bridged the gap and he lifted the cube up to his face to examine it closer. It was an eye. Specifically, it was a hazel eye with a white sclera, a fine tracery of blood vessels working through the white. It hung suspended in the center of the cube, and as he turned it he could see that, where the optic nerve would normally attach, there was a fine web of gold circuitry. Spinning it back, he looked at the pupil, the shape of the cornea. It was fantastically detailed. Now, according to my notes, humans have a distinct pattern of retinal blood vessels and iris coloration that is unique to each eye. Unfortunately, nothing I received from my niece, and at his he swung an arm wide, questing for great truths from where she was standing beside him and pulling her into a sideways hug, had any info on the missing eye. I based this on your remaining biological eye, with some minor variation to give it some flavor. It took Stace a moment to break away from his new eye, to look Word in the face. Thank you. It's perfect. It will take a few days for me to get set up here, and we will need to have some discussions about exactly what you are looking to get out of our collaboration, but for now I would like to take some time to unpack and relax. I had a long journey, and I'm curious about these human video games Quest was telling me about. Is it true what she said about those, what did you call them? Oh, yes. Arcades. End of chapter. If you enjoyed, like, subscribe, click the bell so you don't miss any episode and do all the other YouTube stuff, visit and support the author, and I'll see you next time. If you didn't enjoy, comment on what I can do better. And as usual, have a wonderful day.